Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, all about Microsoft Teams, specifically Microsoft Teams Business Voice, which is a fairly new package from Microsoft that allows you to put an add-on to Microsoft Teams to your phone system, and you can use it to then essentially make calls with your Microsoft Teams. So without further ado, let's get started. So very quickly, from a housekeeping perspective, if you haven't been on one of our webinars before, I welcome questions. There's a chat box on the right-hand side of the screen where you can pop in questions as we go. I tend to not particularly see them as I'm running through the presentation, so don't be worried if I miss your question or appear to miss your question. We will cover that off at the end. If you're watching this on the replay, there is still a questions box. You can type in a question there. Submit that will come through to me on an email and I will come back to you. Duration today, again, expect to be around about 30 minutes and we will send out a replay link after 24 hours. So if you do have to drop out of this at any point in time, you can drop out and you will get the replay through 24 hours later. So briefly, for those again on the webinar who don't know who we are Onefix Limited, or I am from Onefix Limited. We're specialists in providing fully managed IT support for businesses. Typically, we look after companies with between 10 and 150 staff, usually managing their entire IT infrastructure, the help desk, supply of equipment, security, all of that sort of stuff. We do also work with in-house IT teams where we can add specialist skills such as disaster recovery, backup management, security, and we save our clients essentially time, money, and stress. We reduce unexpected downtime. We manage IT budgets and planning, and we keep them secure. My name's Craig, so I'm Craig Atkins. I am the Managing Director of Onefix. You can find me if you use Twitter. I am at Onefix without the hyphen on Twitter. Alternatively, if you search for One-Fix Limited, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Please do connect. You'll also find us on YouTube, where you'll see all the webinar replays that we've been running recently. So stepping into the content, I'm not going to go through completely what is Teams, because if you're looking at Teams Voice or considering Teams Voice, you probably know what Teams is. But for those of you who've only briefly heard of it or aren't using it, essentially Teams is Microsoft's communication and collaboration tool. It's used for internal meetings, external meetings, chatting, screen sharing, video calling, voice calling. It's a communication and collaboration package. It's essentially free. It's free with Microsoft Office 365 plans, or the Microsoft 365 plans as they're called now. All of the plans that include anything more than just email include Microsoft Teams. I thought it was quite interesting to look at actually how many users are using this now as a tool and a platform. So at the start of kind of the coronavirus lockdown, certainly in the UK, there was 44 million active users globally on Teams. Within a month, there was 75 million active users. So on April 29th, it was gathered up with 75 million active users. So an incredible 31 million more users in a month. So the reason I wanted to put that stat there was just to give you a feel for how big this platform is, how many people are using it. Because obviously, if you're thinking about using this for telecoms and moving your phone system, then you want to be moving to something that's going to be well supported. So yeah, lots of users on Teams. And if you're familiar with it, Teams is the replacement for Skype for Business, which was Microsoft's kind of, I say short-lived. It was around for a little while, but it was their communication tool for business that kind of was a step up from Skype. So what's 365 Business Voice? Because this is something that's quite new. It's a phone system add-on for Microsoft Teams. So it's built specifically for the Microsoft 365 business plans, which means those plans are designed for companies with up to 300 users. So prior to the launch of this, say it launched in November 2019, prior to this product launching, the only way you could use Teams or Skype for Business for your corporate calling was if you had an enterprise license for your Microsoft Office. Now, when you consider that the business grade plans kind of start from around £3.80 or £4 a month on 365, up to around about £10-ish, the enterprise plans that could support voice calling started at about £18 a month, and then you had to buy calling plans. So previously it was very expensive. It didn't really have an SME offering. So this is Microsoft's kind of reach out to the SME market to take on the phone system market. So if you buy a 365 business voice license, what do you get included? So first off, you get an enterprise-grade phone system. So you get a phone system that's backed off by Microsoft's cloud platform. It's a pretty reliable platform, in all honesty. There's been a few wibbles and wobbles with Teams early kind of April time, primarily because of the massive influx of new users coming onto the platform. But it kind of just goes to show how cloud computing and the power of that works in terms of how quickly Microsoft could scale up their infrastructure to cope with almost a doubling of users within a month. So yeah, it's on an enterprise grade system. You have built-in audio conferencing. So once you buy a Teams voice license, then if you're running Teams calls, then they now have a dial-in number. So if you've run Teams meetings in the past and you've offered them out to clients, if you haven't had a call-in plan, your customers will only get this kind of link that says, click here to join a Teams meeting. There's no way that they can phone in and dial in just from their phone. So once you add business voice and you get all the phone system functionality, you also get a dial-in number for your meetings. And you also, within the cost of the Teams voice package, you get a calling plan, which means that you can make some inclusive calls. So they give you some bundled calls, and I'll run through how those work and how many you get just in just a second. So how does this work? Once you buy a Teams voice license, what do you get? So what it does, it kind of makes the dialing pad within the Teams application functional. I mean, you do have it without the Teams voice, but you can't do much with it. So the dial pad now enables you to call people, just like a telephone. You can also use Teams certified phones. So two manufacturers, Yealink and Polycom, Poly as they're now known, they have physical phones that you can buy and use, just like a standard desk phone. And you can see from the picture there that essentially all of the Teams type phones they focus on having a screen, a touch screen, basically, so you can use this whole Teams experience from the phone. And digressing slightly, but if you do need to, you can buy a Teams desk phone with a camera and actually use it completely instead of a PC. Which could be useful for people who are, again, working from desktops where you don't have webcams. You could buy a Teams phone that also has a camera and use that for the video calling side of things. But the majority of them are standard phones where you would use them for essentially calls. You have a soft phone. So for those of you that are already using VoIP or VoIP systems, you're maybe familiar with the term soft phone. That basically means a mobile or a software phone client. So there is a soft phone with Teams. Essentially, the Teams app itself, which is on iOS and Android, is your soft phone, and on PCs and Macs, your soft phone is, again, the Teams software. You can also access Teams through a browser, so actually you have a huge amount of portability with the phone system. So how are the calls billed if you buy a Teams voice license? Essentially, your base license that you get with the Teams calling plan includes 1,200 UK calls per month, and that includes landlines and mobiles. So you get 1,200 minutes per user. But the nice thing is here, they actually get pooled. So they're pooled at what's called the tenant level, so your company level. So if you, as the example on screen says, if you have 10 users, for example, you end up with 12,000 minutes of outbound calling a month included. So you can probably get the feel there pretty quickly that if you were to roll this out to your company and your staff, you're not likely to have too many call charges, because essentially most of your calls within the UK, non-premium numbers, non-free phone numbers, all that kind of stuff are free to call. Bizarrely enough, kind of toll-free numbers, I believe, do carry a call charge. It's a bit like they used to with mobiles. Obviously something about the way they work. International calls are chargeable, but you can buy a bolt-on. So you can buy an international calling bolt-on, which covers international calls to a wide variety of international destinations. Probably the most common destinations, if you're calling a few weird and wonderful places, they're probably chargeable calls. But the international calling bolt-on, again, gives you 600 minutes of calls per user. And again, these pull together. So if you've only got 5 people in the company, that's going to give you 3,000 minutes of calling across 5 users. So the fact that these minutes pool up and they stack across everybody is a real kind of key benefit. So for those calls that come outside of what you have, you essentially have something called communication credits. These are a prepaid wallet of funds that you can use to pay for calls that fall outside of anything inclusive. So you don't have to use the communication credits. You don't have to have a wallet there, but if you don't have credits in the wallet and someone goes to make a call that isn't included in the calling plans, they won't be able to make that call. So the recommendation is to start off and put £20 or £50 in that wallet. Just use the platform for a month or two and see how much utilization you get. There's a lot of reporting in the background that can be pulled out to see what the spend is and what calls are being made. So very quickly you'll get a feel for kind of the usage of those extra credits. And again, if you've got the national kind of UK bolt-on and you've got the international, it's very unlikely you're going to need anything extra on top. So what are the benefits of a Teams phone system? So first off, I think the cost. So when we look at this, the business voice license, it is on top of your Office 365 license, but again, if you've got Teams already, you've got Office 365, you've already got that cost. That cost is there regardless of what phone system you have. So for £12 a month per user, you can bolt on the Teams business voice add-on. So that gives you those 1,200 minutes of UK calls. It gives you a phone number for that user. Gives you all the bits and pieces that we just talked about. But another thing to do with cost here that's kind of a key one actually is the fact that once you have that Teams voice license, you can use this on any device that you're using. So with some providers, you end up paying a license per soft phone, for example. So if you've got your physical desk phone and then you need to add on a mobile phone client, you're paying for another license for your phone system, or you have a certain number of extensions and then you have to pay more. So with this, it's just the £12 and you can now use that phone on any device. So you can fire up Teams on your home laptop and you can log it in with your Office details and you've got your Office phone with you. So really, really flexible and cheap on the cost side of things once you start scaling it out. Simplicity. You're using a single app. And again, as people use more of Microsoft Teams, they can use that single app to chat, collaborate, video call, hold the meeting. So you're working within one place, one platform, which is ideal for user simplicity. Portability. So I touched on that with the whole soft phone and mobile thing, but as long as you've got an internet connection from anywhere in the world, you can get to your phone system and you can pick up your voicemails. Because you can use the Teams web app, you can log in online. You don't even have to have a PC with an installed copy of Microsoft Teams. You can actually log in through the web and get access to your voicemails and data. It's feature rich. I did consider kind of putting through some slides and going through a load of the different features, but actually, do you know what? It's far too technical and it's boring. But there are some really good key features that jump out that are actually things that either you pay for on other systems or sometimes they're not available. So auto attendance, that's the whole press 1 for this, press 2 for that. They're included free of charge. Call queuing, so having people queue up for a next available operator, that's included, it's free of charge. The one that kind of jumps out because we don't have this on standard phone systems that we're used to using is visual voicemail. So they have, I think they call it voicemail transcription, but it's basically visual voicemail. What that means is that if I leave you a voicemail on your Teams messaging, it basically takes my speech and does text recognition and it will transcribe the voicemail. So it's not perfect. It's like all these kind of automatic systems, they're not perfect, but it's pretty good. So you can see at a glance when you get your voicemails through, you can just scan it and see, that's a sales call, that looks like junk call. Yes, that's something I need to deal with. It's a real time saver actually. And call blocking, again, it's something that is a feature of most phone systems, but it's normally complicated to get to. Whereas from Teams, you can block an inbound call. So if you have a call come through, you don't want to talk to that person again, it's a junk call, you can put them onto a block list and they'll never come through the system again. And there's a heap more features, but these were the kind of the 4 that I wanted to highlight because I think they're useful and they're things that you would normally pay extra money for. When we talk about benefits, we've also got to look at drawbacks. So there are some drawbacks to a Teams phone system. And this one, I don't know, it's a drawback and it's possibly a benefit, whichever way you look at it. It's run by Microsoft now, so that's either a good or a bad thing, depending on where you sit. But it has to be highlighted, they're not a traditional telephony company. They are an infrastructure company, they're a software company, they've got huge amounts of kit. They probably run the most data centers in the world, I would expect, certainly up there with Google and Amazon anyway. They're not a telephony company as such, so that's something to bear in mind. Support is certainly can be harder to access, and support is more partner-led. So you need to, if you're going to look at this and go down this route, you need to make sure you're working with a Microsoft partner, because again, if you've ever had experience of dealing with kind of Microsoft's general first-line support and technical support, it's not fantastic. So having a partner there to assist is certainly smooths things over. And Microsoft do have a little habit of chopping and changing products. They're hugely behind Teams. So from their conference end of last year, Ignite, it was primarily all focused on Teams. Teams is their biggest push, but at one point in time, Skype for Business was their big push. They never really pushed it like they have with Teams, but it was it was their leading communication product, and they have now kind of put it out to pasture. So people who have invested in Skype for Business phones, for example, are now having to look at upgrading and moving on to Teams phones. Now, I mean, the platform itself, Microsoft do run a kind of a guaranteed life cycle. So I mean, if people are on Skype for Business using that for their phone system, I think they've got till 2024 to move away. So it's probably the time in a traditional world you'd be looking to upgrade your traditional phone system anyway. But it is just worth bearing in mind. Microsoft do they're big enough that they can change direction and change the wind. So that's one issue to bear in mind. Another issue is from a software perspective, the Teams calling is amazing. You've got apps on every platform. It's just there and it just works. Hardware-wise, it's a little bit more limited. So there is limited hardware support. From the UK perspective, for manufacturers who sell into this market, it's really Yealink and Polycom. They're the two major vendors. And you pay a little bit more for a Teams certified device, partly because it has to be a certified device. You can't just connect any old phone to the Teams phone system. It has to be a Teams compatible phone. And also partly technology-wise, they're essentially running a smartphone alongside the physical phone hardware. So, they're slightly different to your traditional desk phone. So they are a little bit more expensive. So if you want to roll out hardware phones, your deployment costs, potentially could be a little bit more. But also bear in mind the fact that when you're using Teams, you've got headset like I've got on at the moment. My one PC headset then works for your phone system and your Teams calls and your other presentations and everything like that. So you can potentially save there, and also you may not need a physical phone. That's the point. A lot more portability is provided by just using the applications rather than a traditional desk phone. And potentially it's harder to manage. Now, this is a kind of a maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It depends what your current system is. So managing a Teams phone system is partially web-based, and some of it's very straightforward, and some of it is a bit more technical and complicated behind the scenes. If you've got a really straightforward VoIP system at the moment with a kind of control panel where you can control everything, Teams calling is probably harder to manage. If you're currently using an internal phone system that you have to phone someone up to get them to come out and program, a calendar date and time change or a rule change of your routing, then a Teams phone system is more flexible and it's actually probably easier to manage. So this is really depending on where you're coming from as to whether it's harder to manage or not. But certainly it's something that actually can be managed by multiple people. So again, if you've got an internal team, they can manage this, and also your tech support like us, we can manage it as well. So there are, again, it's more flexible but potentially more complicated. Now, before I step onto Teams Rooms, actually what I want to do is just show a video actually just that overviews Teams Voice and how a UK company is using it. So I'm going to stream this through now. It's about 2 minutes long, and I'm going to turn my microphone off as well so that I don't interfere.
Boston Limited is a server and storage solutions provider.
We've got about 200 employees currently, and we ship to about 40 countries. We can't do that without speaking to people on the phone.
Communication used to be a challenge. We were using legacy technologies, classic phone system, and then multiple tools to try and stay connected.
Microsoft 365 Business Voice is a small business phone system that operates from the cloud. It allows you to connect from any device, from any location, and has seamless integration with the full Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
It's like having a virtual office. You've got all the tools available to you in a single screen. People feel as if they are working together.
You've got the full support of chats, file sharing, meetings, and phone calls. You can start off a very simple phone call, and with a click of a button, you can enhance that to give you full video, high fidelity sound, screen sharing, and collaboration.
Having everything in one place means we save time. Time is money. If we can access that conversation, that email, that document on our mobile device, we can get that to a customer faster.
With Microsoft Teams and the integration into Outlook, our users can now load up their contact list, click a phone number, and immediately Microsoft Teams is dialing that person.
Microsoft is a brand name that's trusted, so it puts our minds at ease, but also for anyone that works with us as well.
Any admin, even non-technical users in many countries quickly create phone numbers and assign them to their users.
It's more than just a telephone replacement system, it's a full collaboration tool.
Microsoft 365 Business Voice is essential for me running my team. It's saving me time, and I have a calmer life now.
Okay, so that was the essentially the Microsoft marketing video, I guess, from Business Voice, but I thought it was quite useful to show because it just shows you a bit of information about how the platform works across devices and those kind of things. Let me see if I can pull my presentation back. Here we go. Okay, so moving on to something else that we can touch on around this whole kind of Teams collaboration and communication side of things. We've got something called a Teams room. Now these are really cool. These are from the geek in me. These are a really cool thing. We're setting one up at our office at the moment. Essentially, it's a Teams-enabled conference room. So what that really means is if you have currently a meeting room with a screen, or if you've got a meeting room without a screen, you can buy one. But obviously, if you've got a screen there and you're just using it for presentations and things, you can actually buy some hardware that you connect to that screen to make it into an audio-video conferencing room. Now we kind of we played around a bit with video conferencing years ago, and again, it was very difficult at the time because it was one of those things that someone would spend a lot of money and they'd have a Cisco system and it wouldn't talk to somebody else's system. So you tended to find that video conferencing in the past was really only used between boardrooms of one company, in international locations. With a Teams room, you use the room and the system to actually participate in Teams meetings. So you can use it for customer outreach calls, you can use it for staff meetings, especially as we're now looking at much more of a mobile workforce. Having a Teams enabled conference room really makes those kind of calls and collaboration quite amazing. There's different size hardware. So that actually the Teams rooms partners, they have hardware that goes from what they call huddle room size, which is 2 or 3 people around a screen essentially, up to full boardroom size kit. What it facilitates is kind of like an arrive and meet type functionality. So you can just turn up to a room. If you've got a meeting scheduled and booked for the room, you can just press a button and join the meeting. Alternatively, if there's no meeting going on, you can start a Teams meeting from there, or you can have a meeting that's going on your mobile device or your laptop, and you can go into the room and actually join the meeting in that room. So you can kind of carry the meeting across or transfer it to the room. And you can bring your device in and present. So essentially, if you convert your meeting room into a Teams room, you still have the functionality of just plugging in a laptop and running a standard presentation within the office. So Teams room is, again, hardware specific, and the hardware starts from sort of around £1,000. That's for a system that kind of, a bit like a webcam, it sits on top of the TV and it's all integrated in one. And it can go up from there up to sort of £5,000 plus if you've got a very complicated conference room where you need a lot of microphones and bits and pieces. I'm going to really quickly show you how 2 pieces of hardware essentially look, and then I'm also going to play you one more video that just gives a run through on Teams rooms, because it's one of those things that it's a lot easier to see a video than it is to talk about. So the small room option, this is again a product from Yealink. Again, it's the same manufacturers that are providing these solutions. Hopefully you can see, I'm not sure how clearly this will come through, but essentially this is a bar. So it sits on top of the TV, and it's actually a camera and a kind of a microphone bar all built into one. It's got a 4K camera built into that. It's actually like a little PC. It's running Android as an operating system. It plugs into the TV through an HDMI connection. It's got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in. So you plug that, stick that on top of the telly, you plug the power in. They give you also a table microphone that you put on the table that's wireless, and essentially that makes your TV into a Teams device. Now, this is the cheaper end of the market. This one's about £1,000. They say it's designed for huddle rooms, so this is really for, I think they originally designed it to go on top of a small TV, but actually you can use this within a meeting room of up to maybe 5 or 6 people. So a small or medium-sized meeting room, this would be an ideal device. So it's the cheapest way to get into a Teams room. Following from that, you have this sort of product suite, which is for the larger rooms. Slightly more complicated. The installation of this is not plug and play, whereas the previous product is, plug it in the wall, plug it in the TV, and off you go. This kind of product suite, you actually have a standalone kind of pan tilt zoom camera that will do, again, so you can swing around the room and pinpoint people. It has its own mini PC that goes behind the TV, and you have a console on the table. So you actually have like a touch screen that activates when someone comes in the room, and you can choose the meeting to join and have control of that. It's got standalone table microphones. It's got they call it an HDMI ingest, but it means you can plug devices in and present straight through Teams. And again, it's got a built speaker bar as well. So this kind of kit starts to come in, again, around £2,500, £2,600. But you need to factor in the fact that you're going to need someone to actually do the install of this. It does come with mounting brackets and cable routing, and you can make a tidy enough job of it without a professional. But if you wanted it permanently installed, it's a nice thing to kind of actually properly route the cables, because you need some of these cables coming down the wall from the screen across the floor or under the floor and up to your table. So it's a little bit more to think about with the larger room. So let me show you the last of these videos that I've got. So this is the Teams room video, again, about 2 minutes long. This will give you an idea as to how this fits together and works. So I'm going to mute and turn off my camera again, and I will show you the video.
Meetings in today's modern workplace don't just happen in a conference room. They're collaborative sessions with teams around the world. With Microsoft Teams Rooms, we're bringing some tech magic to your meetings to enable your teams to work like they're all in one place, regardless if they attend in person or remotely. And getting started is easy. Just grab the first conference room you find open and use Proximity Join to connect to a Microsoft Teams Room device. While in the room, you might want to focus on a specific attendee in the meeting. Just pin the video from the console to put the speaker on full screen. Beyond video, we want to make sure people who join remotely also feel included with brainstorming happening in the room. And while we can already do that with a digital whiteboard, many meeting rooms utilize a physical whiteboard. The new content camera is able to intelligently find, crop, and zoom in to create a full screen experience. But there's more. Those creative thoughts and ideas can now be digitized and brought into a collaborative experience for everyone involved. So not being physically in the room is no longer a limitation. Even if someone walks in front of the whiteboard, remote participants continue to see right through them, and any progress is continuously captured to keep everyone engaged. Before, collaboration on the whiteboard was limited to people in the room, and information couldn't flow and remained trapped. Now, even when sharing your notes and brilliant ideas on a whiteboard, meetings can be an inclusive experience for every participant, no matter where they are. Work like you're all in one place with Microsoft Teams Rooms.
So now one thing I do need to clarify is with the Teams room there, that the whiteboard camera side of things is actually, that's another device. So actually you can buy a camera that looks at the whiteboard and does the digitization. Very cool feature. It is extra on top of the Teams room. Probably not relevant for everybody, but again, if you have that kind of scenario and you're doing remote collaboration, it's a fantastic piece of kit. So let me kick the slideshow off one last time. And there we go. So that was the kind of overview of Teams, voice calling and Teams rooms. Bang on time, we're actually 1:30, that's perfect. So if anybody's got any questions, please do pop them in the chat. Alternatively, if you've got anything you want to follow up with me about, please do send me an email, craig.atkins@one-fix.com. I hope that was really useful for you in terms of getting an overview of how Teams calling and Teams rooms works. I think it's going to make a big stride into the actual UK telephone market over the next year or two. So if you want to be part of that curve and you want to be ahead of the game, happy to talk to you about how you can add Teams voice calling to your package. One last thing I will say is if you've currently got staff members, you don't have to add this company-wide. You can actually add Teams voice licenses to just a single user. For example, if you have one person that either wants to be able to host conferences that people dial into, or that or they want to be able to test the system out and make calls from their mobile devices. So you can stage the rollout of this. You could purchase licenses for certain people and essentially dip your toes in the water. So I hope you found that very useful. I am going to close off now. Thank you very much for your time, and same time next week, I'll see you for the next webinar.